I'm going to turn it over to Tom Lin. I would really prefer that all the participants just take a good look at the bio sheet that I sent out to you all. Tom has a very interesting position currently. He's at the Hopefull Group. He's a VP there, where he helps there on the input side, bringing product into China. He's also a professor and a lecturer at the Chinese Agricultural University. He's a DTN correspondent here. He's a really unique resource for us in these times, in that he's here in the US and he's able to speak directly on what's happening in China, both historically and under the current situation. So I am really excited to hear from Tom Lin. I'm going to make sure that he is unmuted. Go ahead, Tom. Go ahead and hit her, and let's. I'm excited to hear you talk.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Beth, for your invitation. Really excited to have this kind of opportunity and to get together with everybody. I guess the coronavirus is impacting everybody. That's why we are all sitting locked down. This morning I was asking my wife and get me a shirt, and she said, nope, you didn't have a shirt. Because I'm in a refugee status. My son was escaped from London and he's now quarantined in my house. I just Russia, we packaging, well, yeah, he kicked us out. So we are now living in my friend's house. I stay for 2 weeks before we can get together. So that's why I'm in a very casual style. Advertising, my company is a crashing plant. So I work for a small crashing plant. It's like, but that's the largest private-owned crashing plant in China. We have a capacity of somehow of 300 million bushel crushing capacity. That's probably the production of North Dakota, South Dakota put together. That's what the crushing capacity, but normally we import kind of 60% of the volume. That's kind of like North Dakota soybean production. That's the volume we import every year. Well, when Ed was doing the presentation, I was somehow, it looks like he already done my presentation already. So you have gone through all my slides already. So we are pretty similar content, I guess. Just have do that. Yeah, the two things, swine flu and then swine fever and then coronavirus, that's been impacting China throughout well, the last 2 years until now. As some Chinese idioms talking about like lucky things come as well, arriving in single, and disaster will all come coupled. So well, the American swine flu is actually starting from northeast China, if you know the Chinese map in this area. Most people believe the reason for China get the swine fever was because we import some pork from Russia because of trade war, and we cannot, well, the government don't want to import more pork from US and then open a border to Russia. Well, actually people understand there is swine fever over there, but it's still open the border. So the first case was found in northeast China, and then go all the way to the south, kill many of the hogs. In the northeast China, and the estimate was like 30% of the hogs was killed, and the virus keep going on to mid of last year, it got to south of China area in Guangxi and Guangdong province, this area, almost 80% of the hog was gone. And then after that, it goes up again, coming to the middle of, back to the middle of China. So in that case, and half of the hog population was gone. So it's impact to the country a lot, but it's different in areas. So as you go further south, the impact will more from the virus, but the beginning area, Northeast China, was not that too bad. So the average is around like 40%, or even something a little more than 40%, as Ed just talked in his slide. So the government was, this is the data from Agriculture Ministry of China. It didn't show that bad situation, but still you will see the hog, this is the hog population and the sow population. So both of hogs population and sow population was down a lot. It looks like you know, when every time when hog price is getting lower and farmers start to curb as much as possible the sow, and then that will make a problem of the industry. So the industry can find it very hard to coming back. And so far, the price of, well, after the African Swine Fever and hog price getting higher. So this is where in at the beginning of last year, and well, there's some people are a little bit confused of like we already have the swine fever in August of 18th, but the hog price was pretty flat or even lower at the beginning of 2019. The reason for that was, well, there were several reasons for that. The first reason was when there was swine fever coming to the country, and farmers get scared of the fever, and then they try to get rid of the risk. And the way to do that is to slaughter the hogs as much as possible. Then you have oversupply. Even the hog is not ready, not mature enough to send to the slaughtering house, but the farmers still prefer to do that because they don't want to take the risk. That makes the hog supply higher. So at the beginning of 2019, the price is low, and then in the summertime, suppose like we should have the price go higher in the summertime, but still the price not increasing a lot in the summertime because the government said they're gonna check all the storage house. If they see any of the storage house have kind of a positive test, and they have to destroy all the meat. So that make all the trading companies scared to get away of their storage as soon as possible. So they put more meat in the market. Then the market price is still in the lower side, and after that, we don't have meat anymore. So the price goes higher around like 1 year later after we have see the first case of African swine fever. Now the price, of course, the price is pretty high now. But the sow price is getting higher a little bit early because you have most of the hogs killed, and then some of the farmers want to build up the stock. but you know, many farmers already killed the sow, so they have to rebuild the reproduction herd. So nowadays you see the sow price is pretty high now. Because of that, we were thinking of well, if China market is not good, if all the hogs is cured and they don't have enough meat supply, can China import more meat? Well, yes, if you see the chart from last several years, last year we did import more pork and beef compared to previous years, but that's not a lot. Just think of hog import is about close to 2 million metric ton, but the market was actually have lack of a supply of more than 10 million metric ton. The other reason for that is like the international market can only supply about 7 to 8 million metric ton of pork. That's the trading volume in the international market. That means even China buy all the pork from international market, still cannot meet the consumption. So there is a big gap of pork supply and consumption in China. The market was talking about, well, if pork price is too high, Chinese consumer may change to poultry. That's true. Some of the consumption has transferred to poultry, but not a lot. If you see the pork price increase last year, then the poultry price is pretty flat. That's because the cuisine in China and people still prefer hogs. So we were thinking of hog production was down about 30%, 40%, and broiler production is only up around 13%, 10 to 13%. So that's not, there's some substitution there, but it's not a lot. And if you see the chart of 2020 now, the red line here, the price is not, it's getting even lower. This was the impact from coronavirus. So the restaurants closing and people are locked down at home. So meat, poultry consumption getting less. Well, that's the impact of African swine fever. Now the second topic will be the coronavirus. Coronavirus starting from beginning of this year, for the past almost 3 months, I was living in a kind of weird condition. So at the beginning, China started to have the coronavirus and people was really scared about that. First city, Wuhan, was locked down in January 23rd. That's the day before the Chinese New Year. And then everywhere in the country was locked down. Road was blocked. The companies or schools, because it's Chinese New Year time, everybody went to their hometown and have a long-term celebration of Chinese New Year. So the country is actually already shut down because of the holidays. And then the virus starting from the beginning of the holidays. So many people was stuck at home, cannot go to work. And if you see the charts, and PMI was sharply down here. So the impact is actually, this is where the SARS was. This is the 2009 the financial crisis. So it's only in this position, but this year the coronavirus impact is actually much worse than the financial crisis in about 10 years ago. Small business is still not be able to coming back to work. I was reading the news yesterday, and the government was talking about 70% of the company get back to work. But the problem is whether they will be able to get their, well, if they can get their supply of the raw material, or they can get the, reach the market. So it's pretty hard for the small and medium companies to survive now, like tourist companies, restaurant, hotel. Those will be the most impacted industries. Still now, nobody wants to go to a restaurant to have lunch. The government tried to promote that, and some of the government leaders volunteered to restaurant to eat, to promote the restaurant business, but we didn't see a real change in that yet. And in China, many of the time, the government data is fake. You are not really, well, you get this kind of data every month, but you will never get the real data. So there is some kind of way you can try to avoid just looking at the government data and just make a wrong decision. One of the things was to see how the electricity works, the power plant. So the chart is the coal being used in the electricity power plant. Most of the time in this, beginning of the year is lower, and then it should getting higher. But this year, see the demand for coal for the power plants keep very low. That means many of the manufacturing and they are still locked down. Local government tried to push some of the company back to work, but they either couldn't find their employees, because the employees still locked down in their hometown and cannot come back to the city, or they will not be able to get their supply of materials. So what the company, what the the small company can do is turn on the machines, let the machine run, just run the empty, to consume some electricity, so the local government can report to the upper level government, say, yeah, we are doing a good job and we're pushing the company back to work. And what will be implied to soy industry? The first impact will be the vegetable oil consumption. In the past several years, every year, Chinese consumer will increase about like 4 to 6% of vegetable consumption throughout the year. Chinese cuisine is really based on vegetable oil. Everything they cook, they will need to put oil first, and then put vegetable or meat or whatever they want to cook. So vegetable is kind of required in every Chinese kitchen. If vegetable oil consumption decline, that means the consumption is really bad. Especially in the restaurant business. For my company, we provide Beijing market. My company is close to the capital city, Beijing. So we supply more than 50% of the restaurant in Beijing. So if you go eat, have a lunch in Beijing or dinner in Beijing, you have half of the possibility you are using the vegetable oil from Hopefull Group. So the impact of oil is very bad. So before the restaurant can come into business, I don't think they will consume more vegetable. The Chinese soybean balance, again, is a lot of data here, but the first line is production. So we are producing some of the soybean, as the soybean is originated from China. China produced around 15 million metric tons of soybean. This year, the government said we will probably produce 18 million metric tons of soybean. Well, I still doubt about that, whether they will be able to do that. For the import volume, 17 and 18, this is the highest import volume in the history. And then because of the trade war and also the swine fever, the import volume lower a little bit, and the government is expecting the import volume will be a little bit back from last year. So the crushing plant consume most of that, around like 90 million metric tons of the soybean go to a crushing plant. Of course, all the importing soybean should go to the crushing plant. And food use is still a big section in soybean consumption. We consume the consumption of the food consumption is kind of a parallel to domestic production. So if you see the domestic production is around 40 million and we consume 40 million. For last year, we produced 50 million and the consumption is 50 million. So all the local production go to food market. They make tofu, make soy milk, many kind of soy products. And then all the import soybean go to crushing plant to produce oil and meal. And then back to the coronavirus, now it's throughout the world. So it's not only in China anymore. It goes to everywhere in the world. You can see there are only several countries in Africa and 1-2 countries in South America not finding any, not confirmed any cases yet. Otherwise, everywhere it's being confirmed. US increased a lot in last week. My guess probably next week, US confirmed numbers will be the +1 in the world. Now we have China, more than 80,000, Italy around more than 60,000, more than 70,000, I guess, and US more than 60,000. So if we are keeping this kind of speed, US will eventually become the #1. This will be a big issue in the world this year. If we see more news about financial crisis in Wall Street, I don't think that's like that's the thing being we can solve the problem yet. Even the government stimulation will be there, but you know, the financial stimulation can only solve some of the financial problem, but we're going to have some economic problems. So the world market will, if you are thinking of China has been locked down for more than 2 months, the restaurant closed, everything closed, and people locked down at home. There's less demand in China, and this kind of demand change will expand to the world through the virus spread. So the situation will get worse in the next couple of weeks. We'll see how the world will lock down and how the demand will change in the world. And in the meantime, and China still buy more soybean from Brazil. If we see we saw some of the bean is already exporting to China, but most of the bean still import from Brazil. This is the Brazilian season. Brazilian harvesting is almost done so far. But in the meantime, Brazilian currency is depreciate a lot. It's close to, some days more than $1 to $5 reais. It's very low currency now, so that's good to help the Brazilian farmers to export more product. Some of the Brazilian farmers already selling next year's product. In the past couple of months, Chinese company keep buying more and more vessels from Brazil. So what we're gonna do with the U.S. market? Before the first phase deal, China bought about 11 million metric tons of American soybean for the old crop. And then in the last couple of months, keep buy a couple of cargoes a week. And now the volumes are around more than 13 million metric tons, but still far behind what we are expecting. If we are thinking of the first phase deal is based on 2017, China import about 35 million metric tons of soybean from the US. If we want to increase about 50%, that will be close to 50 million metric tons this year. China need to import from US to fulfill the first phase deal. How much they can import from US from now to next year? I mean, February next year. So my guess is most of the import volume will be the new crop, because when the crushing company like us, when we buy soybean, we don't buy hand to mouth. So you have to buy much earlier. No, most of the time, half a year earlier to cover all your positions. So nowadays we are already at the end of February of March. So we have been using all the Brazilian import to cover the positions. So that means before US harvesting, Chinese company not be able to buy many cargoes of US bean. Well, it's possible the government can order CAFCO or Simon Grain, those kind of state-owned companies to buy US bean in whatever price. If they don't want, or sometimes they don't think about the profit. They just do that. Even that is still far behind this kind of volume. So most of the volume will coming from the new crop. If China can buy another 30 to 40 million metric ton of new crop, and for US can deliver that before February 2021, we'll still be able to fulfill the first phase deal, or just in a portion, a soybean portion. And of course, we're still thinking of some other issues like meat, corn, maybe ethanol, whatever agriculture product we can buy from US. So based on the coronavirus and African swine fever, that kind of impact will be both in the demand side of feed, because hog population, and also the consumption side of human consumption of meat from either household or restaurant. and that's issue from China, and also from the worldwide, we will also see a decline of demand. Brazilian production this year so far is one of the best year. I think we'll have a historically high yield. Even the weather was not good in the past month because they got some kind of raining. They lost some yield and lost some quality, but still, this is one of the best year. U.S. planting will start next month. So far, we have good moisture. Everything goes well. So I'm expecting we have a good starting of a plant. In that case, I don't see any any kind of bullish signal from the fundamental analysis. From technical analysis, looks like the price is also in the downside. So that's my presentation. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoy that.